welcome to the Logic Apps Automation series. I'm Divya Swankar, Product Manager in Azure Logic Apps team. We have recently launched a new SKU of Logic Apps, purpose built for automation workloads and for all builders. The goal of this series is to go deeper into the product, one feature at a time, and to talk about what it does, when to use it, and the use cases it unlocks. I want to kick off this series with something that is core to building any automation, and that's workflows. The reason to choose this topic is that any automation that you build, whether it's a deterministic process or an AI powered automation, workflows are the foundation to it. Workflows is where all the automation starts, and in Logic Apps automation, we have three different ways to create these workflows. You can pick any of these options to build your workflows. It all depends on where you're starting from, your use cases, and your personal preferences. The first option to create the workflows is to start with an empty workflow, which is essentially a blank canvas. And then you can go ahead and add triggers and actions step by step to that workflow. This is a great option when you already know what exactly you want to build, you're familiar with the platform, and you want full control on the process. The second option is to use templates. Templates are out of box pre built solutions. So instead of starting from scratch, you can start with something that is proven to work and then you can adjust it based on your needs. This is also a great way to learn by example. And the third option is to author workflows with the help of AI Assistant. Here you can describe what you want in plain language and let the AI Assistant create the workflows for you. This is a great option when you exactly know the outcome you're looking for, but you don't quite know how to wire things up or you're just getting started. Here are the three ways to create workflows in Logic Apps automation. You can start with an empty workflow for full control, or you can use pre built templates to start with something that is already proven and then build upon it. Or you can use AI Assistant to describe in natural language what you want and let the AI Assistant build the workflows for you. However, you start, workflows are the foundation to any automation and everything builds upon it. So, let's take a look at all these three different ways of building workflows in action. Alright, so let's start by signing in the automation portal. So, this portal is outside Azure, and so all you need to do is type auto.azure.com and then use your Microsoft Entra ID to sign in. So here this is the landing page and click sign in and use your Microsoft Entra ID here. So here is the landing page that shows you automation environments and all the recent applications and workflows that you had interacted with. This page this page would be empty if you do not have any of these resources just yet. In my case, I do have a couple of environments that I've already created, as well as a bunch of workflows apps that you can see in the list here. If you do not have anything here, then the first step would be to create an automation environment. So you simply come in here, click on this button, and then provide the information such as subscription, resource group, region, and then the name of the automation environment, and then click on create. So that would kick off the process to create the automation environment. It might take a couple of minutes for it to completely provision. But once the environment is created, then you are ready to create applications and use applications in there. I already have an environment, so I'm going to skip the creation step and I'll directly go into my environment here. Environment is your topmost unit of interaction. This is also the container for your applications, sandboxes, and any other configuration and infrastructure. So it's totally up to you how many environments you want to create. You might want to choose environments based on your development environments like dev, test, production, or you might choose to create one per business domain or based on your project teams. So it's totally up to you how you want to organize your footprint based on application development boundaries or business boundaries. Then the next step is to create your application. If you don't have any application here, you can create a new one by selecting here and providing an application name and just clicking on create. I already have one, so I'm going to skip this step as well. But one thing to note is that when you create an application, you're automatically added as the contributor to your application. However, if you want to share your app with other developers, then you do need to explicitly grant them permission via the settings here. So, this is where you can choose to add more users and provide them appropriate permissions in terms of adding them as readers or contributors. So, with this, our basic setup of projects and applications is done, and now we are ready to create the workflows. So, let's go ahead and use the app that I've already created here. Inside the app, you will see a page that lists your workflows and can create new workflows from here. But along with that, an app also has connections, parameters, as well as settings that apply to your application. All right, so here on the workflows page, you can already see two options to create your workflows. The first one is to create them from scratch, and then the second one is to build via templates. So let's start with the first option, which is creating workflows from the scratch. When you create a new workflow, you need to provide a name for the workflow, and so you can go with the default or you can provide your own name. So I will say build your own workflow. So now we are in Logic Apps Designer, and since we want to start from scratch, the first step would be to add a trigger to your workflow. Trigger is how the workflow gets started. The trigger is how the workflow starts. So we have a lot of options. Logic Apps has more than 1400 triggers and connectors. Here we have organized all these connectors and triggers into various categories, as well as we also have the search operation here, so you can do a free text search as well. So the first one here is where you can add a request trigger to your workflow so that your workflow simply acts as a REST endpoint. Or you can do things like running workflows on a schedule, adding some communication based, event based triggers, and so on. So I'm going to keep it simple and use a trigger that adds a request endpoint for it. Next, I want to add one more step after the trigger, and you can add a step that executes in a deterministic way, or you can also add an agent here. I'll go ahead and add a step to get weather information, and here I'm just going to do a free text search here. So this shows the connector and all the operations from the MSN weather. So I'll choose get forecast for today. I already have a connection created, so I'll just provide the location here and close this. So now we are ready to run this workflow. In your workflows, to test them, you simply select test and then run the workflow. In the run history, we can see both the steps have been completed, and run history shows the weather forecast for the location that I provided. When you're ready to publish this workflow, you can simply click on publish, and then the workflow goes from draft state to the published state. So this is how you can build and test workflows from scratch, adding one step at a time. This is a great option when developers want to have more control and they want to build these workflows and test the workflows iteratively. Let's create workflows from templates now. So here on the workflows page, you will see the option to build from templates. When you select that, you would see the templates gallery and it shows you tiles for each of the templates that we have available. So there are templates ranging from very simple use cases like a request response or something little bit more complex with a managed connector like get weather, and then even more AI based scenarios like this one which does sentiment analysis on product reviews using AI reasoning. So for this demo, I'll go ahead and use the get weather template. And when I choose that, it basically shows little bit more details about what the template does, um, the number of steps in the templates, as well as the connections that are used. So you can go ahead with the default name or provide whatever name you want for the workflow. I'll go with the default name and select use template. So here is the workflow that gets generated for that template. And as expected, it has a request response trigger and then a step in the middle to get the weather forecast. Now you also see some of the nodes here marked as test. So the templates by default are running on test data. This is to make sure that when you create a workflow from a template, you can successfully run that template with the test data that is provided in the template. So let's see what that looks like. Here you will see a tab for test data, and this basically shows that this action is running on test data, and here is the test data that is provided for this step. Now when I run this workflow, it's going to use the test data, which is what also shows here. And this way you can actually run a template end to end and look at the results from each step. So the idea here is that you can iteratively update each of these steps and replace the test data with real data. And when you are ready to test them with the real data, you can turn this flag off. So this is how you create workflows with templates. So this is a great option when you find something in templates that already meets your requirements or already meets your requirements to a good extent. Then it's much easier to further update, further modify it, and extend it to your needs. Another option to create workflows is through AI Assistant. And so the idea here is that you can describe what you want in natural language, and then with the use of AI assistants, you can create these workflows. To create workflows with AI Assistant, you still create an empty workflow first, provide it a name, and then this opens the designer where you see all the options. So here you also see the option for Copilot. When you click on it, it opens the side panel, and this is where you can start describing what you want and then let the Copilot work on it. So here I'm going to create a workflow to provide the weather forecast for a location and then select generate. When the assistant works on the request, it might come back with clarification questions. And so here it's asking which weather source should I use for the forecast data. So here I know I want to use the out of box managed connector for the MSN weather. And so I'm picking that choice. In the chat, we can see all the steps that the copilot, the assistant, is taking in order to prepare for the workflow and then create the workflow. If you expand on one of these steps, you can actually see more details. So here is the workflow that gets created. It starts with the request trigger, and if the location is provided in the trigger, then it the forecast is generated for the provided location and then it is returned in the response. If it is not provided, then the copilot also added the failure path here where it returns the response indicating that the location is missing. At this point, you can run this workflow or further interact with the assistant to add more steps to this workflow. So, this is a great option when you want to build workflows iteratively and leverage AI Assistant to help with the creation of the workflow. All right, so that brings us to the end of this episode. If you have a use case for automation, then go to auto.azure.com and build your first workflow. We covered three ways to build workflows in this video. You can start from scratch, or use an out of box template, or describe your workflows and use the Copilot to build these workflows. Whatever options you choose, Logic Apps automation will enable you to build and test these workflows seamlessly. Alright, so you just learned how to build workflows with Logic Apps automation. For now, it only follows the rules. And next episode, we teach it how to think. So stay tuned.